Oh, so bear with me, my thing has shut. So yes, Cosmin, it's a pleasure to be here in Paris and to chair this discussion. We've only all just met online before, so it's really nice to meet in person. Our theme, Europe versus the world, is deliberately bold. And I think I've been advertising it as the best panel. I'm sorry, Georgie or Bassina, but it probably will be. Invites us to take an honest look at what Europe does well and how it measures up in fintech and investment and building the future of financial innovation. We're definitely not short in talent or creativity or ideas, and we'll cover that. But scale, capital deployment, and speed to market still challenge us across Europe. Our question is, how do we turn Europe's diversity into a strength? How do we move from individual or national successes into a genuinely integrated and globally competitive ecosystem? So, I couldn't have three better people on the panel to discuss that, and I would invite you just to introduce yourselves briefly and maybe give us one thought or one theme that matters to you in this context.
Okay, shall I kick us off? So it's wonderful to be in Paris. My name is Aoife MANSFIELD. I'm the founder and managing director of Athrú Group. And we work with innovative financial services firms and investors to deal with the headache that is often regulation and compliance and risk management. Let's face it, it's not very sexy, although Fintech Romania are doing their bit for that rebrand with some of the stickers that you'll see, not least your safe word being regulatory compliance. Cosmin, we might need to chat about that later on. And what we do is we work with those firms to help them reframe risk as a true competitive advantage, and no better geography to do that in than in Europe.
Hi. So I'm Alessandra GUION. I come from Brussels, and I'm one of the co-founders of Fintech Belgium. Like 10 years ago, I joined the board. I was CEO for 8 years and joined the board. And we also started the European Digital Finance Association, EDFA, which is a federation of all these local associations. And then I also am a board member in one of the biggest fintechs in Belgium, Isabel. And on the side, because it's not enough, I also support startups in fintech and climate tech to grow. And so I would say that one thing that I see, we were talking about investment and so on, is that definitely investors are looking for three things when they invest: scalability, innovation, and the team. And definitely the team, you mentioned it, we have immense talent, resilient, creative, and so on. But we need to support these entrepreneurs much more to be able to scale and to be more innovative by giving them more money to do so, and the way to do that may be to simplify and harmonize many things, including the regulatory framework.
Thank you. So hi, my name is Socheat. I'm the managing director of Sopra Steria Ventures. So Sopra Steria Ventures is actually the strategic partnership and investment arm of the group Sopra Steria. So Sopra Steria Financial Services basically is around $1 billion. You know, it's also the core banking of most banks. You know, throughout Europe. I've got more than 25 years of experience within financial services. So first as a past trader, went into asset management and private equity, so VCs, hence a bit of knowledge. And I've actually lived to 3/4 of my life in Europe, so UK, been to Singapore, lived in Singapore, lived in Japan, South America, also had some stint in India and the Valley. So hence a bit of, you know, overseeing what's happening across the world. And if there's one thing, so we talk about opportunities and challenges of Europe. So basically, we all know it. I think the word is regulatory, which is actually one of the one main challenge for us. But it's also, you know, like a great opportunity, and we'll explain why afterwards. Cheers.
Thank you all. I'm going to ask a few questions and probably not stick to the script at all. But Alessandra, maybe start with you. How do you think Europe can strengthen its position in fintech and financial innovation, and particularly compared to the US or Asian markets?
Yeah.
You've touched on it a little
Exactly. I will go back and I will hit that nail non-stop. But basically, I deeply believe that our regulation and administrative as well set up and just the reality of Europe is pretty complex, very fragmented, and I think that harmonizing everything and simplifying would help hugely. Now, if you look at the US, one license will enable an entrepreneur to address a market that is approximately 345 million people, customers. And we talking here, the biggest market is 84 million in Germany. So see a little bit the size. And on average in Europe, it's 15 million per country. So you see the difference with one license. I wouldn't say one go-to-market strategy, but nearly. And then you go back to Europe and you see what they have, all the hoops that they have to go through. And they have to every time address new languages, new regulatory framework, even if they are passporting, it's not enough. We need to go further with this, I believe.
On our call to prepare for this panel, we touched on regulation and we looked at fragmentation and regulatory divergence, but we also discussed like scale and ambition and capital depth, and we couldn't work out which was kind of the biggest challenge. But as Socheat, how does the kind of corporate VC community view Europe's competitiveness and capacity, I suppose, capacity to scale globally or to access a large market?
Well, so as a CVC, or for most of the CVCs, there's three things, right? It's a tri-dimensional world. So the first one is, of course, scaling. The second one is regulatory. And the third one is actually innovation. This is weird to say, but if you have a look at what's happening right now, US is great at scaling startups and innovations. Asia is actually at the leading front of tech finance innovations. So mostly, like Singapore, India for payments and so UPIs and also CBDCs. And in Europe, basically, so what do we have? We got regulations. So when we talk about, when we have a look at that as a CVC or for the CVCs, yes, Europe is seen as lots of regulations as opposed to scaling and leading forefront innovation.
Compliance is costly. So is there enough money to innovate?
Well, if you have a look at, in terms of strategy, I don't believe that it's just focused on just one thing, which is, well, innovation will lead the world, like the US would say so, or whether governed states type of innovation will actually be very quickly be diffused into other countries like in India or even Singapore. Where in Europe, yes, it costs in terms of either innovation, so being at the forefront, and it costs us in terms of less money. So instead, then therefore, it's in terms of scaling. Yeah.
Thanks. So Aoife and I have met in person before, and we had a lovely discussion about the joys of governance, which we both love. And governance can be a tool for growth and not just a barrier. But from a governance and investor kind of confidence perspective, how do you see Europe performing relative to the other major markets?
Absolutely. So picking up on some of the threads already, I think the dynamics are very, very different across those markets. And at the heart of governance, I think what often gets overlooked is your risk appetite. And I think that what would really unlock Europe's ability to realise some of those global ambitions is changing the way that we think about risk, less as an inhibitor and more around the nature of the risk that we're prepared to take, to start to shift towards mindsets that truly are more innovative, and then reflecting that in the nature of the regulation that we have. It's really easy to sort of say, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed by the amount of hoops I have to jump through, and that is a very real thing. We sit down with our clients investors and fintechs alike on a regular basis and have that discussion. And, you know, there are real-life examples of where that goes horribly wrong as well. We had one particular client, a new market entrant, and they completely underestimated what the requirements of the regulator were going to be in terms of some of those governance structures and being able to articulate what compliance really looked like. And what should have been a 6 to 12-month process very quickly became a 24-month one because they entered with the wrong mindset.
Okay. Jumping around in the script a little bit, Alessandra, where do you see structural or policy levers that could make scaling fintechs across borders easier in Europe? So from a European policy perspective, what do you think could change to make growth and scaling easier?
I think that the 28th regime would be amazing. Now it's going to be like incredibly challenging because, gosh, but I think that would be a good start. And I also deeply believe in data sharing. We were discussing that earlier on, and basically look at the fraud and what we have to face. And imagine that now the whole of Europe, even globally, but that's I'm a big dreamer, but at a European level, imagine that all the banks, all the fintechs can share the data to fight fraud. We would be much more ahead. At the moment, they open an account, a mall account somewhere, and then they jump to one country to another, and we don't even communicate. So yeah, I think that shared data would help as well. And definitely reinforcing, sorry, it's the third thing, and it's my dada, as we say in French. It's, I think, supporting the ecosystems, because they are the voice of fintech, they are for the policymakers and the national NCAs, the local NCAs, a way to know exactly what's going on the market. And because, you know, making policy, you're very high up, and knowing what the effect it has on the market is super interesting. And so it gives a voice to these fintechs, that's one thing. And another thing is creating a network locally that will enable to cross borders within Europe. Because as we said, you get into a new market, it's a new whole story, new language, new culture, and new way of feeling the risk aversion and so on. So it's, yeah. These ecosystems are super important. So
sometimes policy and strategy drive innovation and growth and scaling, but usually it's driven by the market and policy kind of follows. But Socheat, from your experience, what role does CVC or corporate venture capital play in driving that collaboration across Europe, driving the market?
You know, yes, I'll be very contrarian to market beliefs on that. That market will drive innovation. Depends where. So first of all, just as a big reminder, 25% of all startups deal comes from a CVC, right? That's one statement. Then 10 to 15% of all money that are linked or that are going to GPs, so VCs and private equities, come also from corporates. So these are already, first of all, stats. And why am I saying that? Not to say that, CVCs are important and things like that, but it's just that on one point where we can actually support and help into bridging the gaps of regulatory markets and innovations, it's how do these corporates work together alongside. So giving a very good example, so in the US, you've got examples such as Google Venture working a lot, with the people like SoftBanks or Sony Ventures, right? So we know that they're already building not only just market innovations, but they're building the next infrastructure. Okay, so that's in the US. You've got that counterpart in Asia, where you've got the Ant Financials, you've got the Alibaba, you've got the SBI Holdings, which are actually corporate VCs working with their big target management, whichever you can say, like Temasek and some others, to actually build again that infrastructures and data. And when it comes to Europe, we've got less examples, to be fair, but there are some people like Deutsche Bank and Zilch. You've heard of it, right? So UK BNPL fintechs working with Deutsche Bank as a bank, and they are making sure that they are taking advantage of the local regulations and the European requirements. So I do believe that in that sense, CVCs matched up with some other large VCs can actually support creating the next innovations that will be framed by regulations, by local regulation.
Okay, thank you. I think that takes us neatly maybe on to the next question about capital depth and investor behaviour. But Aoife, we'll put you on the spot, if that's okay. How do you think Europe's capital markets and investor behaviours differ from the markets we've mentioned in the US and Asia? So,
okay, yeah. I'm going to grossly oversimplify this, but I think that where the US invests for potential and Asia invests for performance and speed and scale, quite often Europe won't invest unless there is proof. And that's a very, very different starting point. And, you know, brilliantly I made points earlier on in terms of the list of examples that we can give from other markets of some of these interesting partnerships, and actually they're far fewer on the ground here. In terms of kind of how we change that, I guess, I've talked already about my sort of evangelical belief that risk appetite and that reframe is really important. I think the other thing, though, is the way that we navigate that regulation and making it much easier and more transparent. So I'll give you another example from my magical mystery tours of European banking license applications. So we had one client recently who were expanding, a different client to the earlier example, in a new market. And they have a really innovative model. The way that they do things doesn't sit neatly in terms of what a traditional retail bank would be or a traditional corporate bank. And actually, they thought they were safe when they were looking at financial crime regulation and their business model in that context. But the nature of the country they picked, the local implementation in law of that European regulation meant that there was a quirk that would completely change their operating model and had a horrible surprise both for their board, their executive, and their investors alike. So being able to spot those surprises early on and preferably not have them, I think starts to get you to more of a space where you feel like you can realise some of those ambitions and that more inventive mindset to investing.
Cosman's given me the eye, and unless we keep this panel very exciting, he will interrupt. So, I suppose where I come from, a little place called Northern Ireland, I'm at the juncture of Ireland and the UK, which is kind of right at the corner of Europe, but is a very innovative place. And Northern Ireland and Ireland have really grown as kind of a fintech hub and an investment hub. And we've saw the things that have led us to become that. Focus on regulation, a focus on being attractive, a focus on skills, and a focus on seeking investors. But if I could ask each of you and give each of you a turn very quickly, again, remembering that Cosman will ruin our fun.
It's kind of the last intervention that I can allow.
So he did. If I could ask you in one sentence, what do you think Europe needs to do to become the leader in fintech investment, or to lead the next decade of fintech investment, in any order, whoever's ready?
I'll jump in. Dream bigger, move faster, and be less afraid to break things, because the next revolute has got to happen more quickly with fewer obstacles.
Definitely with you on that one. That, and I believe also support your ecosystems. The local ecosystem, the European ecosystem is super important. They are underfunded. Everyone thinks that they are great, that they are absolutely crucial, but no one believes that it's their role to support it financially. And content-wise, yeah, the queue is out of the door, and around the block. But we need, all these ecosystems need better funding, and it is the responsibility of everyone to chip in, I believe.
And I believe of taking advantage of regulations, trust. So Europe is the leading in terms of sovereignty. Cybersecurity is going to be a big deal. Everyone knows about defense and security. So everything we can export. So Europe can actually export its trust-based innovations to the world. That's my thought. Anything that's linked to fintechs, data, KYCs, KYBs, anything that's linked to regulations, Europe needs to be the one people choose. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Alessandra, Socheat, and Aoife, for your insight and energy. I think we had a good panel, and we covered a lot of ground, and it's clear that Europe's competitive position is based on some very unique things and some real skills that we can export to the rest of the world.
So thank you very much. Give them a round of applause. Thank you very much.